You want to draw but don't know where to start? Welcome to this beginner-friendly drawing series. My name is Lada and I created this video series to answer the most common beginner questions. Where do I start? How do I make my drawings look three-dimensional? How do I shade correctly? And much more. These lessons are completely free, so all you need is your pencil and a bit of curiosity. So grab your pencils and let's get started. So this is our first lesson and let's start from the very beginning. To make drawing easier, we need to learn how to break down any object we want to draw into simple shapes. This method is called simplifying objects. Once you master it, you'll be able to approach complex drawings with more ease, capturing volume and proportions right from the start. Breaking down objects into primitives means simplifying complex forms into basic shapes. But what are these basic shapes? Let's take a look at the three fundamental shapes: the sphere, the cube, and the cylinder. Now I'll draw these shapes to demonstrate. Once we have them, we'll apply this method to real-life objects that are made up of these shapes. Let's start with an apple. I think it's the perfect example for this exercise. Now, which of the basic shapes does it resemble the most? That's right, it's closest to a sphere. That's why, when I begin drawing an apple, I don't just outline its shape right away. Instead, I start with a simple sphere as a base and then gradually refine it, adding details to make it look more realistic. Now, let's make things a bit more challenging. This time, I want to draw a pear. What basic shapes is it made of? That's right, two spheres stacked on top of each other. Let's quickly sketch the structure to see its form. Now, let's move on to an even more complex object, a bell pepper. What do you think is the best primitive shape for it? I'll start with the cube, as it provides a solid base for its structure. But of course, we'll smooth out the edges later to make it look more natural and realistic. So, we've sketched out the three basic forms. Let's start adding details step by step. This will help transform these simple shapes into more realistic objects. After simplifying objects, the next step is adding details. To make our drawings look truly three-dimensional, we need to understand how forms exist in space. Cross-contour lines help us with this, so let's explore what cross-contour lines are and why they're so important. Cross-contour lines are drawn across the surface of an object to describe its forms and volume. They help us visualize how an object curves, bends, and exists in space. Let's look at a few examples. If we draw straight lines without following the form, the result will appear flat. Straight lines create a two-dimensional effect, and if we add hatching in the same way, it won't convey depth. Instead, we can use cross-contour lines to better illustrate the curves and volume of an object. These lines help us understand form more deeply. Even though they might not be visible in the final drawing, keeping them in mind will ensure that our sketches always look three-dimensional and realistic. By adjusting the direction and spacing of these lines, we can refine the form and enhance realism in our drawings. This works not only for larger, more complex forms, but also for smaller ones. Here is a simple exercise to practice cross-contour lines. So, draw an organic object. Start by sketching its basic shape, then add cross-contour lines that follow the curves of the object. Use these lines to describe the volume and 3D form. Pay attention to how the direction and spacing of the lines change as the surface curves. This will help you create a more realistic, three-dimensional drawing. Let's return to our drawing. Now, just like in the example, I'll start by marking the cross-contour lines to better analyze the form of the apple. You can see I begin with the larger lines, then gradually add smaller ones between them. Also notice that at this stage I remove the perfect circle at the base and slightly deform the shape of the apple to make it look more realistic. Now it's time to add more and more subtle details to the drawing. Just to reiterate, in the final drawing, you won't actually see these lines. However, I'm intentionally showing them in detail here, because this approach to drawing really helps you analyze the form of any object. Eventually, you won't need to draw these lines every time, because you'll always keep this concept in mind, making it easier to capture the true shape and depth of whatever you're drawing. So, let's move on to drawing the pear. First, I refine the outline and erase the underlying shapes of the two spheres using an eraser. Then I add some details like the stem. After that, just like with the apple, I begin to sketch the cross-contour lines. It's amazing to see how volume starts to emerge on the flat drawing, even before adding tone and shading. The magic of 3D form is coming to life. And now, we've reached the most challenging drawing of today's lesson, the bell pepper. First, I take a kneaded eraser and lightly soften the initial construction lines from the basic shape. However, I don't erase them completely, as they will still be useful. Now, I begin breaking the larger form into smaller segments, marking the natural division of the pepper. The approach is simple. Start with the big shapes, then refine them with more details. This also helps smooth out any sharp edges. Next, let's sketch the small protruding stem on the left. Observing the reference, I focus on capturing its shape, again starting with the broadest forms before adding details. To improve clarity, I slightly reinforce the outline of the pepper. As you can see, I began adding cross-contour lines to the stem. This helps illustrate how the form curves. Then, I extend these contour lines across the entire pepper. Notice how it instantly gains a three-dimensional appearance. Finally, we can slightly strengthen the outline of the pepper to make the drawing stand out even more at this stage. So, we worked through all three objects, an apple, a pear, and a bell pepper, starting by breaking them down into their basic primitives. Then, we added cross-contour lines to better define their forms. And very important thing, One of the most common mistakes beginners make is drawing only the silhouette, simply copying the outline. However, this approach is not effective, as it often leads to inaccuracies in proportions and form. That's why I recommend using our method. First, establish the simplified base shape, then refine the drawing with cross-contour lines to create a more accurate and three-dimensional result. So let's summarize our method. Step 1. Observe the object and study its form. Step 2. Simplify the form into basic shapes or primitives. Step 3. Add cross-contour lines to create depth and volume. By following these simple steps, you'll be able to draw even the most complex shapes with ease. I hope you found this video helpful. In the next lesson, we'll start adding volume and shading. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. I'll do my best to answer all the questions. That's it for today, and see you in the next video.